After having maintained its 16-seat showing in the 1989 election, the party suffered a slide in the early 90s and lost all of its seats in 1993.
The mistake I made, I think, that we had the best candidates that we've ever had in '93, right across the province. And 2 years earlier, especially after Roman was elected in Harcourt, we were at 30% of the vote. We were thinking about the possibility of forming government. But then the media, I think, played somewhat the role of the battle of the mayors. And the spectrum moved to the right dramatically. Even in the debates, the media would give me credit for him won the debate, but it didn't matter. The spectrum had moved to the right, and the Liberals were the ones that had moved it to the right, first with the core. And Klein was just a better campaigner.
We felt that we were the government in waiting, and we weren't. We had to prove it.
Ross Harvey, who had served as the NDP MP from Edmonton East, became leader during the struggling times as the party looked to find its footing. Things started to turn around as Pam Barrett took over the leadership reins.
She was a fantastic politician. She was a great judge of timing, and she was fantastic orator. And she vent her anger on behalf of Albertans in a way which would make a big news story.
By 1997, a new era was beginning, as Barrett and Raj Panu were elected to the legislature, and it was two against the world again.
Pam and I worked very well together for the 3 years that we were in the legislature battling Klein. She was quite a performer, there's no doubt about it.
The following year, the two of them forced the government to reverse their position on sterilization compensation. It was an issue that made national headlines.
And what this government was trying to do was absolutely outrageous. It outraged Pam, it outraged me, and as we learned in the aftermath of what happened in the election that afternoon, vast majority of Albertans found also that the suggestion of this government doing that absolutely outrageous. So a firestorm all over the province as a result of this. So Pam comes in, she asks the second or third question. You Liberals had the first 3 questions, I guess. Pam asked this question right away, and she threw this damn thing in the air and she made the theatrics that she was very good at. And Klein was absolutely stunned. Either he wasn't briefed about the real contents of the bill, or he didn't anticipate that the reaction might be that fierce and that we might preempt them, in their ability. Once they introduce the bill, then the procedures come in. You can't really do much about it. But if you can disclose the whole thing, if you can sort of bring this news to the fore before that, in the question period, it becomes a huge story. And Pam did it so ably, it's unbelievable. I'll never forget. And the next day, the Tories walked in with their tails, between their legs and withdrew the bill. That was the impact. That was a great victory by a caucus of 2, just because Pam was so alert and smart and able to ferret out these things, before, as we were preparing to go in. She was just amazing in that sense.
Stand up now, stand up now, stand up now.
With the victory over the sterilization issue under their belt, the party took up one of the most celebrated political fights in recent memory, Bill 11.
And Bill 11 certainly was a very lethal piece of legislation in its potential. Had it become law, I think we would have lost public health care.
In the spring of 2000, the Ralph Klein Tories were planning to permit the establishment of private hospitals. The cause sparked fierce opposition, and the NDP were front and center at rallies on the legislature steps. Klein even accused the party of inciting riots.
Bill 11 mobilized Albertans like no other piece of legislation ever has. Those meetings in the evenings, in the front of the And we would come out from the legislature and address people. They would wait for us to be addressed.
Rallies, lots of rallies. And with every rally, there's a little march to make sure that everybody's catching it. So, yes, we were there. We were present and accounted for. We did our bit there to make sure that that issue was in the forefront of people's minds.
There are tens of thousands of people across small communities, from northern Alberta villages and little hamlets and towns, who were sending in petitions day in and day out. And we would be, of course, presenting this petition on the floor of the legislature on every day that the House sat. And that also created enormous public pressure on the Tories to begin to listen and slow down, the strategies to undermine the system.
Also that year, the unexpected resignation of Barrett put Panu into the leadership role.
Unfortunately, Pam resigned in December of 2000. She was a real loss, I think, to Alberta legislature, not only to our party, but to the legislature, because the legislature needs people like her kind of mind, her kind of experience, her kind of sharpness, of debate. But for me, those 3 years were very significant years in my own development as a politician.
In the by-election for Barrett's seat, Edmonton City Councillor Brian Mason stepped forward to keep the NDP at 2 seats. Mason and Panu complemented each other well and soon became a powerful voice in the legislature.
So after the 2001 election, Brian and I made in my judgment at least, a very effective team in the legislature. Very effective team. We kept the Tories at bay on the healthcare issue, on the utilities privatization issue, and many others. So it was a very good team experience that I had with Brian. So one day I remember we brought 2 little duckies, ducks. Brian and I, he had one, and what if it walks like a duck, squawks like a duck, is a duck is a duck is a duck. This was about this Bill 11 became Bill 37, I guess, or something. And so we brought those, and media loved it, of course. Got in the made a great TV cut.
4 years later, with an election looming, Panu stepped aside and Mason took the helm.
So I agreed to step down, and Brian took over, I guess, sometimes in end of July or August, if my memory serves me right. And the rest is history.
The decision seemed to work as the party doubled its seats in the 2004 election, giving the NDP official party status once again.
I would have been disappointed if we hadn't got bumped up to 4, and it was a hopeful time. I mean, regrowing something is a process, and that was the step 1 was to get the party status business happening.
From my perspective, I was one of the 4 that came back. It was an exciting time for me. Obviously, that we would have liked to have had more than 4, but it was certainly that 2 going to 4 was a step in the right direction. We used to laugh. There's 3 leaders and David Aiken.
Dave Aiken was a refreshing presence there. He was a very, very good MLA, right off the bat, very soon. A great sense of humor, lots of energy, youthful optimism. All of these things helped. So there's a team of 4 was worked very well indeed.
It was short-lived, though. In 2008, Panu retired from politics, and the party dropped back down to 2 seats.
I was a bit disappointed in 2008 when we dropped back down. That was just sad, and we kind of lost some ground there. Maybe it was taken for granted we just get our 4 seats back and grow from there, but every election is you can't take it for granted.
But if there was a silver lining in that election, it was the emergence of an up-and-coming politician with a familiar name, Rachel Notley.
People are disappointed again. Why would you resign when you're doing so well? We loved you at your MLA. Why are you resigning? I said, I'm giving you a better person to replace me. That was my answer all the time. And that has proven to be the case. Rachel is an outstanding MLA. And a young person, a mother, and I mentioned that in my conversation with the media at the time. I said, look, here's a woman who has 2 young kids, and she's still willing to commit herself to a full-time political career. I say she has a good job, she's giving up on the job. She has family to look after, and yet she's willing to do this. How you can't find a better candidate than that.
The next provincial election saw a different dynamic, as the upstart Wild Rose Party pushed the Tories and divided the right-wing vote. The extreme policies from the Wild Rose led to concern of an ultra-conservative government and brought people to the polls looking for an opposing voice. The NDP grabbed 4 seats. While some familiar faces are back under the dome, there is also new blood and an opportunity for a fresh start.
Darren Billis, I had worked with him. I was leader when he began working with me. And I was always impressed with young man's earnestness about politics. I had wished very much that he would become a member of our caucus one day. And that was wonderful news stemming from the 2012 election results. He became MLA. I think he'll be a great MLA. Wonderful, wonderful young man with a great big heart and passion for good politics.
I think we're going back up again. I think things will be better from now on.
With the party's fortunes rising and a reinvigorated party faithful, the hope for the future has never been greater.
Well, I think Jack Layton said it well, loving, hope, and optimism. You know, while it's been a conservative province forever, I see big changes occurring, and but with the help of the young people, because they're the ones that are going to be around the longest, I'm absolutely convinced that if they keep the faith and keep working, that there will be a social democratic government in Alberta very, very soon.
It's possible to have a better future. I think that's what Albertans need to be convinced about, that we can have, in fact, a much better future with the alternative that we have to present to them.
Our day's done. The future is theirs. And I want good, strong, opinionated women involved in it.
I want a world that where all people are heard and represented in the body politic, where justice and fairness is not something to search for. It is something that's evident every day in public life and public discourse and in legislation. I want a society where it's not the voices of the most powerful that are always heard, but the voices of the weakest and most vulnerable that take predominance.
For young people, change is possible, and you have to work for it. And social justice is never out of date, as I said at one meeting.
We're building a social movement that tries to improve the situation for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and that don't forget the past but don't dwell on it. Build for the future and make sure you understand that it is a social movement and a political party, and one doesn't come before the other.
The NDP is the party that does take into account the needs of people who are everyday people. We don't take money from corporations, and we don't think that the power that corporations have in the world today is justified and good for the world. And if you care about the world, you should care about the NDP.
People are all equal. That we should, the Inuit, the Métis, all them. I wear a button on my vest. I believe in equality. And that is what I want the NDP to stress, that we're all equal here.
It's not impossible. Look what happened with Jack Layton. You know, you never know when things will just turn around. Maybe when you least expect it.
We have only started, together we'll have victory.